Hello and welcome to Master the Moment. I'm Joe.
And I'm Christian, and Joe and I are the co founders of the Culinary Executive Mastermind. And in this podcast, Joe and I are going to share with you our knowledge, our experience, and our expertise to help you to create a better life for yourself, for your family, for your career, and for your business.
And welcome to Master Your Time Management.
That must be one of the things we get the most on our events, that people saying, hey, I need help with time, and how can you get more done? So Joe and I are going to share with you guys a little bit on how we manage our time and what worked for us. And hopefully there's some value in for you guys to model maybe some of that, and maybe even share some of your ideas with us. We always interested in learning from you guys and what you guys have done to manage your time. So Joe and I gonna share again our experience, our knowledge, our expertise. Hopefully, it will be one or two pieces which ring true for you, and maybe some of them might be even something you already heard or something known of. But repetition is the mother of skill. So if you
Yep.
hear it again and you don't practice it, you don't know it. So with that, I turn it over to Joe. So Joe, what do you think from a time management perspective? What is overall your thought around time management?
Well, time management, we all know that we can't manage it. We can manage ourselves. So it comes back to ourselves. And
Mhm.
what I find day after day and listening to others, well, I don't have enough time. And really, it comes down to a question: what do you not have time for? And are
Mhm.
you clear on what you're trying to get accomplished in the day? That's my big takeaway is, again, a good question of what it is. And that will go into other things saying, are we clear? Are we really
Mhm.
clear of what our day looks like? Um, ask a good question, get a good answer.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then go ahead.
you spot on. For me, I feel the same way around time management. Unfortunately, you can't manage time, and for me, time is just the great equalizer. Everybody has the same amount of time.
Yep.
Time does not care your background. It doesn't care if you're sick. It doesn't care if you do great. Time is just is for everybody, and so for me, time is one of those things. How for me, I'm Joe always calls me, I'm the stat guy. I like to maximize time, and I like to schedule. And that's one of my things. So for me, if I look at my top three things with time management, the first one is really, why are people not hitting their goals? Or why do people say, I don't have enough time if everybody has the same amount of time? And for me, it is really investigating. I ask all of my clients to do a inventory on what they spend time on. So what I
Yep.
ask you, the first thing to do is really keep track. What do you spend your time on? So if you get up in the morning and have 15-minute exercise, take a piece of paper and write down 15-minute exercise, 20-minute shower. I have 15-minute coffee. I connected with my family, 1 hour breakfast. I drove to work for 45 minutes, and really keep track. If you do that for a week, it gives you very good indication where your time sucks are. So if you can't measure it, or if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. You heard this said so many times, and it really, really works. And for me in time, I'm a stickler about measuring and planning it out, because for me, I track everything, and Joe knows that. I track how many hours I sleep,
Yep.
and then I compare myself. Oh my God! In some countries, they sleep less. How are they doing this? But for me, it's really, my first rule would be, I would track time, and then I allow a time budget after I track it, for personal time, for recreation time, for growth
Yep.
time, for family time, for work time, and everything else. So my first advice or suggestion to you guys is really, manage it and track it and see where you go. How about for you, Joe?
Well, again, clarity, because if I come up to clients and I say, well, what do you need more time for? And they'll
Hmm.
say, well, I want to try to do this. Well, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, I don't have enough time. Well, then make time for it. Put that as a priority. And again, getting very clear on what you want. And if you get clear on what you want and you track what it is, again, it's face forward and seeing
Hmm.
yourself in the mirror, because a lot of people, when you had said about tracking it, they don't even want to track it because they will know that they do have time wasters. And we've all heard
Yeah.
of that, time wasters. Really, watching that TV for 3 hours, and then you really wanted to get that patch in the cellar
Mhm.
done. Well, it wasn't that big of a priority. So again, clarity is, I think, part of this key.
Absolutely right. And for me too, when you write it out, be very specific of what you want to
Yes.
get done. And for me, so I use the example of driving your kids to daycare. If you drive your kids to preschool, if you drive your kids somewhere else, is your intent to drive them where you just takes a half hour there, half hour back, whatever it is, or is your intent in spending time? So for me, I drove my kids to school, and for me, it was I wanted to connect with them. But what I realized is the back and forth trip was an hour. And what I really just needed was a half-minute connection. So I have somebody drive them, or I put them on a bus, and I take a
Right.
half hour in the morning and I just have breakfast and really connect with them one-on-one. So really being clear when you schedule it,
Yep.
do you want to have connect or do you want to just do it because you enjoy doing it? So for me, I gave me a half hour. And so
Yes.
I look at that a lot. How can you schedule? And then I always use the example um, of what happened to me recently. I live in New England and it gotten really cold. And for me, I schedule everything out. So if you do
Yep.
schedule, let me give you a piece of advice. Everything you schedule usually takes twice as long as you think you do. So schedule some extra time in it. And for me, when I schedule it, I also schedule breaks. I don't like when people saying, "Hey, I book myself, all day long, and that there's no
Right.
downtime," because if you don't have that downtime, I think your body needs it. So what's happening is, did you do that internet surfing, which kind of your body needs some time to regenerate and kind of regenerate itself,
Right.
or is it something where you just track because you just need some time for yourself? So for me, I schedule my breaks. And Joe and I know Joe knows this about me. For me, we doing this. I say, Joe, I need a 15-minute break. And so it's just really kind of to regenerate. So I work
Yep.
in bursts. So, but my example is in New England. I schedule my week, and my heater broke. Being in New England, my heater broke, and so I called the company. They came out and doing it. I tried to fix it myself. I tried to reset it and all of the things I learned over the years how to fix my heater. And at the end of the week, I realized I spent 10 hours on my heater. I didn't schedule that time, but I
Yep.
found that time because it was important to me. So for me, what I'm telling you here is if you have something which is important to you and you schedule it, you will find the time. So therefore, be really clear. I love what Joe says about clarity. Is really, be clear of what it is. Do you doing it to fill your day, or is it really something which is important to you? So I found those
Yep.
10 hours and I didn't have it scheduled. And I hear this a lot. I don't have time. I can't find time. You can always find time. What I learned about time is spending time is a choice.
Yep.
And the choice is what Joe just said. If I choose to spend binge watching Lost, for 10 hours a week, there's 10 hours gone. And it's not saying it's good, bad. If this is what you value and what you do as a downtime, that's exactly it.
Correct.
But I think if you schedule it, you have a better chance of managing your time.
And these are just some of the tools that we can provide. What my second big takeaway is, there's 24 hours,
Hmm.
24 hours in a day. And then I get this, well, I didn't have time to give you a call. Out of 24 hours, okay, let's say you slept for 6. Okay. What's that left? 18 hours. In 18 hours, you couldn't find 2 minutes, make a phone call.
Hmm.
It's just, again, go back to your clarification. It's on prioritize and
Hmm.
really what you want. And I don't believe people know really what they want. They use uh, time management as an excuse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking at it, so if you track your time, which is, first point, go ahead and track it. And
Right.
the second one, half the time budget, how much time do you allow for everything? And then is how do you budget it and how do you plan it? Joe and I created our plan and we called it the Sunday night planner. I
Yep.
used to create and I used to sit down and I planned out all my week Sunday nights. So I haven't spoken to Joe about it yet, but what I was looking at last week, I was, hey, how about I do it on Friday afternoon? So I get all my calls done on Friday mornings. I have my final client calls on Friday. So Friday afternoon, I started planning this week. You know what the difference was for me? It allowed me Saturday, Sunday to get a little bit of a head start already, what I wanted to get done.
Correct.
And I think I gotta take hours on the planet, make it a Friday afternoon planner,
Yep.
and just kind of sketched it out. And I felt like I was a lot more productive this week getting this little bit done. I actually learned that from one of our mentors, and he said, hey, he's doing this on a Friday, and I kind of pushed it off and I did it this week. Made all the difference.
Made a
So
difference.
that's a new tool. So
And
when you schedule it out, Chef, how detailed should people be? Should they schedule this? Certain buckets they should put stuff in. How do you recommend they do that?
you got to do it so it's comfortable, because some people do it so detailed, then they get overwhelmed, then they get procrastination, then they get nothing done.
Hmm.
But it's got to be detailed enough to make, basically, you're holding yourself accountable. That's what
Hmm.
it boils down to. Myself, I even schedule time, exactly what you just said, for things that are coming out of left field. If my assistant books me completely for the day, that's a no no. There's
Hmm.
pockets of time for what we call life happenings, because life happens and you got to allow yourself that time. I ran a catering business for over 30 years. Everything was built on time, everything.
Hmm.
And I can proudly say we were never late for one banquet. And
That's
so
amazing.
by that being, it then comes into play these systems and
Hmm.
the tools that we use for the systems, then it becomes a lifestyle. And I'll even joke with this, and we've had experts, and it seems to be a split, an even 50-50 split. Our clocks in the kitchen were 20 minutes fast. We called that cater time. But
I
yet,
love that.
people say, you psych yourself out. You know that that's 20 minutes and you got 20 minutes. Hey, it worked.
Mhm.
So these are some of the tools, and you got to find your own tools to make it work for you. But the most, again, coming back, being clear on what are you missing the time for? What do
Mhm.
you really want this time? And really think about the time savers we do. All we're doing is creating more time for the next day
Yeah.
by
I, I,
trying to
I
salvage time today.
absolutely. I love what you just said. So let me ask you a question. How do you do that? So there's a lot of technology out there around
Yeah,
managing your time because it seems to be on everybody's forefront. And time, you can't buy more time. It doesn't matter how much
right.
money you have, you can never buy more time. We all have dealt the same time here. So how, from a personal experience, how are you, for an example, manage your time? Do you use technology? Do you use good old fashioned pen and paper? What do you do? What works for you?
I do both. I do both. I do it on my phone. I do it on my computer, because we have so many things going on. I use it as a tool to help guide me for the
Hmm.
day. I have no I guess I'm blessed with energy. I don't sleep, as you well know. So cramming it and pounding it hard is not a problem for me, but I
Yep.
have to know where I'm going. Otherwise, I'm a firecracker just spinning out of control. So I use it as a tool for guidance,
Hmm.
for guidance. And
I.
again, uh, let's use some of these tools. Let's go beyond just managing the day. If we
Hmm.
go into a meeting, as you well know, Chef, you and I never, and I really emphasize this, never walk into a meeting without an agenda.
Yep.
We have a set agenda, we have a set time, and we stick to that.
Hmm.
And in fact, actually, people are usually 8 out of 10 say, "Thank you for making the agenda." They're not,
Hmm.
and I would say that's one of our great tools that we use is an agenda.
That's great. So for me, I I'm a little split on that, just like Joe. For me, when I plan out my week, I like to do it in writing it out, because I
Right.
believe there's power in writing things out, and I think it kind of creates in your psyche what you want to get done by physically writing it out. And then to hold me accountable and manage me, I use apps. So for an example, when I schedule my time, I physically schedule breaks in. I schedule my lunch. I schedule when we do dinner. And Joe knows that for me. Okay, we coming up to, we need to go make dinner. And for me, I like to schedule that. And for me, what I found, I work really well when I do like 1 hour intervals. So for me, I schedule to work on something for 1 hour. My kids, I have 4 kids. My kids know I'm working on this for that 1 hour, and they leave me alone. So I just kind of bunk it down. And then my phone tells me, oh, it's time to take a break. I even schedule where I recognize when I get something done, and I have it in there, and I can share with you guys what I do. It says, hey, good job, Christian, because you know what, we don't do
Yes.
really good job celebrating each other and
Patting
having an
ourselves on the
accountability
back.
button. So so for me, and then it kind of sends me, my phone sends me, I pre-scripted it. Hey, have an amazing day, make an impact, leave people better than you found them. And all of those little things I use technology for, but planning it out, I physically actually have my planner right here.
Yep.
I plan it out and I write it out by hand. I believe there's something really powerful in writing it out, but I measure everything. I use an app called Life Cycle, which for me tracks my sleep. It tracks when I drive somewhere. It tracks what I do. And then for me, I just look at it. How can I become more efficient? And then I can also look, where are my time sucks? And Joe talked about earlier around where you spend time. So that goes for me into our third
Right.
point is, how can I make 10 hours a week? And we get this a lot from our clients. How can I free up 10 hours? Joe had the first one. We have it. So I actually did a little bit of research, and I found out that the biggest time suck for anybody is actually watching TV.
Yep.
And so Joe hit the spot on. For me, my biggest one is when I look at my calendar, I call it buying my time back. So for me, I look at it, what can I delegate? So what can have my
Yep.
assistant do? How can somebody else do something for me to buy me some time back? The next thing is I have here, and Joe, I don't know if you knew that or not, phone calls actually came up as the third highest time suck. How do you manage your efficiency? I mean, you're the king of phone calls. How do you manage phone calls?
You know what? I basically, again, I use a time management paper, and
Mm-hmm.
in that one section, it's just my phone calls. And then once I get on my phone calls, I use excuse me, this one tactic. I never set down my phone. I just hit click, and that's it. Go to the next one,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to set down the phone, go get a glass of water, come back, and then those are your time wasters. So once I pick up the phone, I never set it down until I'm done. And then I allow some time for all the phone calls. The other time saver that have again, a tool that works with phone calls, I never leave them open ended. If
Mm-hmm.
they say they're going
I
to
love
give me
that.
a call back, I say, give me a when. When should I receive that phone call? And if I don't hear from you at that proper time, do you give me permission to follow up?
Mm-hmm.
Because I used run several companies, so do we, and if we left all 26 phone calls open ended, it's a nightmare, because that doubles into the next day and another 20, and it's like compound interest.
Yeah, I love that, and that kind of brings me into the fourth point. The national. This now came from a statistics that the fourth biggest time suck is email. Chef, how you manage email?
It's a ritual. I clean them up twice a day, if not
Hmm.
3 times a day. The first, and they say that shouldn't be basically, something you should do in the morning. I make it a ritual. I feel cleansed when I can clean up all my junk mail.
Hmm.
I get up, I take a shower, I do something for Joe first, and then
Hmm.
when I get into the office, the first thing I do is get rid of that, because for me, that's what just bothers me.
Yeah, I love that. For me, it's similar. So the way I manage email, I do it twice a day as well. So I do it
Yep.
once in the morning and once at night. And what I found in the morning, I set myself a shorter period of time, because I'm doing it all at night, so there's less stuff coming in overnight. So I set myself a preset time in the morning, and when I'm done with that, I don't get it done. I I don't have the inbox management. So for me, that seems to work. And then I take a bigger chunk of time at night. So I don't, Joe knows you don't get emails from me during the day. You get it in the morning or at
Right.
night. And I spend a little bit more time, but I try what Joe does with his phone calls, that I I don't like write a lot of long emails. Mine are very short, very to the point. And for me, I don't let emails be open-ended. And then when
Correct.
I have an email which takes some attention, or a project I'm working on, I'm very clear about when I expect write them back. You hear from me on Friday, and then I schedule
Yep.
in the Friday. And for me, doing this, and that's a habit I had to learn. Listen, it didn't come natural to me. I'm like Joe, let's do something cool. Let's create something new. Email can write. And it's really, so for me, all of the things we're telling is, it is a learnable skill. Time
Right.
management is a learnable skill. As I learned the way you spend your time, and the other thing what I learned bit around time, when you spend your time, the time is a choice, and the way you spend your time is
Right.
a choice. And when you look at your week and you plan it out, what was my biggest aha moment for me was the first time I did it, how much time I spend on things which I felt which were important to me, but we made no impact in my relationships, my career, and my income. And so for me, kind of learning that and shifting that. So for me, that was the single biggest impact, learning that the way you spend time and the way you manage it is a choice. And so for that, if I keep that in mind, it created for me a why. So now, if I want to spend time with my family, and you guys know my kids are adopted from China, so for me, it was a conscious choice that we wanted to have those kids. And when I spend time with my kids, I don't have my phone with me, and I don't have my
Right.
computer on. They know they have 100% attention for that. And just for me, that became part of the scheduling. So email for me, as we talked about, is one of those things. I do it morning and at night, seems to work really well for me. It doesn't work all the time, and some days I need to play some catch up, but I
Yep.
do not do emails on Saturdays. So for me, Saturdays, email free. You will not get an email from me on Saturday. But then I start it up again Sunday night. So then it comes in Sunday night and Monday. So that's how I manage my email. So for me, I want to share with you guys something which makes the single largest impact for me. And it's a simple, I call it the 15-15. And the 15-15 is where I get up 15 minutes earlier than I wanted to. So if you normally get up at 6 o'clock, I take that 15 minutes, take up at 5:45, and I just sit there and I look at my calendar for the day and my schedule, and kind of, before I even go about my day, I just kind of glance through it one more time and say, hey, this is important to me. And I kind of memorize a few highlights, what I want to get done. And then the other 15 minutes is I take 15 minutes before I go to bed and plan the next day. So my 15-15. And when I do that, I do three things. I look what I need to carry over for the next day. I celebrate myself with things we gotten done. So Joe and I launched something really new. So I gave myself a lot of credit last night. I was like, Joe and I knocked it out of the park. And then the third thing is, for me, is what worked and what does it need to be improved. So for me, yesterday I felt I spent too much time on a particular project. I think I need to shorten that down a little bit. So for me, I kind of make that evening
Right.
15 minutes a little bit of a planning session, a smaller planning session. Because as you know, things, even if you plan it on, so this week I told you I planned it on Friday for the week, and a few things changed. So I take now the evening planning to plan the next day. And that for me freed up my most time. And I called it the 15-15. And that 50 minutes probably be freed up 3 or 4 hours a week for me to do something else. And then that 4 hours I frees up for me is, what do I fill it with? Because if you don't plan it, life would fill it with its thing. The
Life
heater is,
happens.
yeah, the heater is not working. My daughter's car needs help. Um, it happens. So for me, I kind of schedule that as well. And then the last thing here, I heard from a time suck perspective is, people don't plan, people don't focus, people don't delegate out. So we talked about delegation already,
Yep.
and people spend too much time eating. So, chef, those four things.
Wait,
Um,
that's our industry, chef. Careful how we do this.
and so for me, My wife and I switched back to the European way of eating. So we have a small breakfast, and we just gotten into intermittent fasting, but that's a whole separate thing. We eating a big lunch. So I make the big meal of the day for lunch, and for dinner we're doing something small. And when we do the dinner, we have a habit as a family of connecting as a family. It doesn't work all the time, but it's a priority of ours that when we eat dinner, we eating together. And it's just a way for us to reconnect. And I found that dinner became my single largest point of gratification, or something I look forward to. Just seeing my kids, and just connecting with them, and talking to about what we eat. And my kids are different. Sometimes to get that, it was almost good, you know. Kind of tough. But so for me, that's a big one. But chef, how do you manage around focusing and planning? We talked around, I think focusing and planning we covered. It's really, I think it needs to become a ritual, because if
And
you don't manage it, it will manage you. How do you feel about, time eating? How do you manage your meal times? And I'm interested to know, how do you leverage your assistant?
okay, so again, we'll start with the systems first. The key to any system, one, you got to use it.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, we all say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and then you don't end up using it, or you use it today, you don't use it tomorrow. You might use it when the shit hits the fan. Okay, and so the secret to that is consistency.
mm-hmm,
You have to be just like what you said. You were on Sundays forever and ever and ever and ever, and it worked, it worked, it worked. But then all of a sudden you sharpened the pencil and you found out Fridays, and then you freed up some more time. And now, if you stay consistent with the
mm-hmm,
Fridays, you will see the rituals of time coming back to you.
mm-hmm.
So,
I,
so
I
my
love
big
that.
takeaway is consistency. Okay, and actually, and you know me, it's actually doing it. Action. Okay. Don't talk about it. And don't talk, again, tell me all about I don't have time, and I'll just throw it in your face. There's 24 hours in one day.
Mm-hmm,
And again, they didn't practice consistency. They didn't practice a system. Okay. And yes, there are some get out of jail free card days, and just shit will hit the fan.
yeah. So how do you manage the mealtime? How do you do mealtime for you?
Well, again, we're in the industry, so meals are again planned ahead of time.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, it's a ritual for us. We know what's in the inventory for the refrigerator.
mm-hmm,
Again, uh, again, the big why. Why is the eating time so important? Okay, again, what you just said. We want to reconnect. My family, my two boys are grown up and have left the house on good terms. I want
mm-hmm.
to make sure we hear that.
Yep.
And yet, my wife and I work together 7/24. So it's our time to not talk business, or it is time to say, hey, what's our next step with this? So it's our connection time too. And meal time, again, has to be systemized. Okay. Meaning that we're at least planning on dinner at this time. What's in the refrigerator the day before we're looking, we're either defrosting something or making sure that we're getting it
Mm-hmm.
prepped. So
Awesome.
again, a connection time. And I'll go right back to how we started this
Mm-hmm.
clarity. Why? And my big question to anybody who says don't have enough time, again, for why? What don't you have
Mm-hmm.
time for? Is it that big priority? And if it is, why aren't you paying attention to it? Again, comes back to consistency, a want, and a want goes, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. And how do you change a want? It
Mm-hmm.
goes into what? Usually a panic into a must.
I, I
It
I
was that
love.
it was that broken little piece on your front door, and you go, I'll get to it later. You
Mm-hmm.
procrastinate, and then all of a sudden the front door doesn't shut, and then it becomes a must. And isn't it amazing how then all of a sudden you found 20 minutes to fix the front door?
Yeah. For me, I love what you said. So for me, my three takeaways are is planning. So I encourage
Yep.
everybody to take an inventory. And in our industry, we used to inventory. Really, where do you spend your time on? What really tracking it? If you really track it for a week, and you could use an app, you could use a piece of paper, you could use your arm. Doesn't make a difference. You need to write it down and really track it, and then be honest with yourself.
Yep.
Where can I make those changes? So
Honest.
number one, inventory, budget. We hearing budget a lot of our industry. You need to budget your time.
Yep.
And if your budget with your partner is 15 hours, that's what it is. If she wants or he wants 15 hours, be perfect. If they want 16, no, we need to cut back. Just really kind of be constant. And then really for me, my biggest takeaway is pay attention to the things which attention grabbers, and I call it energy suck or time sucks.
Yep.
And for me, I love connecting with my family back home in Austria, and I schedule myself a half-hour call, and then it's an hour and 15 minutes. Um, and rather than beating myself up, it's just did something I wanted to do. So for me, the three things again: inventory, budgeting, and then really looking at how you spend it and how can you make those tweaks. What are your biggest three takeaways for today?
Again, clarity. Okay. I'm
Hmm.
going to say this in everybody's face. There's 24 hours in a day. And that to me motivates myself. And then the third, again, consistency and a good system. It just has to go hand in hand. Practice these and your life will change. I have something to say on top of this, and it kind of proves our theory. Before COVID happened, and I'm making this a point, it had to be
Yep.
before COVID. Okay. And I won't release the name for sake of privacy, but
Hmm.
this if I said it's a world famous CEO, and I've had the privilege of being 20 years plus associated with this person. And before COVID, uh, he told me, he says, "So, Joe, how's the business going?" And I would say, "Yeah, but we're getting really busy." And he says, and I said, "So, how do you help manage it?" Because he's flying all over the
Hmm.
world. Okay. He's spending time with his family. And he says, "My latest and greatest," he says, "after 50 years of marriage," he says, we have date night." And I said, "Really?" And he says, "We not only have date night, we have movie night. So 2 days a week, movie
Nice, I
night
love that.
and date night." And I pondered it, and he could see my face trying to adjust it, and where am I going to use this,
Yeah.
and oh shit moment, right? And he tells me, "I'll prove it to you, Joe. I've been to the movies the last 6 weeks and seen 6 movies. How many movies have you seen in 6 weeks?"
Yeah.
And that proved everything to me right there. It proved everything. So I kind of want to wrap it up with that story.
I,
What do you
I,
think?
I love that. No, I absolutely love that. For me, spending time with my wife is really important. And
Yep.
when I do schedule my time, I realize that I always shortcut her. I think she deserves a lot more time. So that's for me, it's a takeaway because
And
it's my commitment to make more time.
on the air, I'm going to agree with that. So if our wives are listening, we're coming clean.
So the last thing is,
Yes.
I hope this was helpful for our listeners, and for me, it just really brings home the point why we created the Culinary Executive Mastermind. So when we get
Yep.
together as groups, so we have these conversations, and if you haven't been to a mastermind, I will encourage you to check us out. And if it's not ours, join a mastermind. It doesn't need to be
Yep.
ours. So I want to be 100% transparent here. But what I love in our mastermind is when we have these conversations with our members. For me, I probably get more out of them than they do. I walk away with 3, 4 pages of notes,
Yep.
just learning some of their best practices, what helped them to get to where they need to go. And then when they have a challenge and somebody shares how they mastered that challenge for me, oh my God, I gotta learn that too. And
Yep.
for me is really what became and why we created these masterminds is the industry needed a cheerleader. The industry needed somebody who can say, hey, how can we support each other? How can we bring people like-minded together? And how can we have that mindset of growth? You heard it said that when a business fails, it's 80% of the time, it's the mindset of the owner. And it's
Yep.
not just that the owner screwed up, it's the mindset that they got stuck. They didn't grow with the times. They didn't learn. They didn't learn new tactics, new schools, new techniques to kind of get ahead of the curve. And what our group is, and I get so much satisfaction out of it, because not only the investment for them, they give in of their time. There's two things our program does really, really well is the ROI, and that's, yeah, everybody knows it stands for the return of investment. And it's
Yep.
also the ROT, the return of time.
Correct.
And every time we do our calls and I walk away and we spend a few hours together, I was like, oh my God, somebody just shared a really a nugget or a little diamond I can use to be more efficient in something else. So for me, if you haven't been part of our mastermind, I encourage you to check it out. We have a trial basis. And again, if you in our industry, we would love to have you. If you have somebody with a different mastermind, we want you to join a mastermind. It will make the single largest impact of your life, in your life, your career, and your business. And it can be the biggest source of time management, time return you're always looking for, you always longed for. So with that, that's all I have. Chef Joe, anything from your end before we finish out today's call?
Just want to thank our listeners for listening, and it was another great time. So again, combined, that's over 60 years of experience wrapped up into a half-hour podcast. You can't beat that with a stick.
Awesome. So our last plug, if you like this podcast, please share it. And we have a commitment to post a new podcast every Monday. And I'm thinking, Joe, maybe we need to start posting it every Friday so people could get a head start on their week.
On the weekend.
But
Yeah,
we are committed to do this weekly. Give us some feedback. Let us know what worked, what didn't work. And also share with us your best practice and your tools which help you manage your
we'd love
time
to
better.
hear from you. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.